All right, our very first problem, number 30. It says, Mrs. Ross, awesome, Clayton's mom is in this problem. She's a school basketball coach. She wants to compare the scoring results for her team from two different games. The number of points scored by each player in each of the games are shown, not below, but to the right. It says how many total players are on the team. Well, if I'm looking, for example, at game 1, right here, each one of these numbers represents a player. So here's one player, here's the second player, here's the third player, so on and so forth. If I were to count that out, I would have a total of 10 players. Same thing for game 2. I would just count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 players here. All right, we're moving on to letter B. It says, what is the mean number of points per player for each game? So we have to find the mean or the average for game 1, and then we have to find the mean or the average for game 2. Remember, how do you find the mean? Well, you have all of your data points, you add them all up, and you divide by how many numbers there are. In this case, we know that there are 10 numbers because there are 10 players. So if you haven't yet figured out what the mean is, add them up and divide by 10. And if you have done that, continue on for the answer. So I add up all these numbers and it gives me 100 for game 1, and I divide by 10. That would be 10. So the average or the mean for game 1 is 10. I'm going to repeat the process for game 2. Add up all those numbers. Guess what? It's 100 divided by 10 would equal 10. So both are 10. Okay, moving on to letter C. It says, what is the median number of points per player for each game? So we have to find the median for game 1, and we have to find the median for game 2. Remember, before you start figuring out the median, you're going to have to organize these data points in order of least to greatest, or greatest to least. So if you haven't done that yet, do so now. Pause the video. If you have, proceed to check the work. So I'm going to go ahead and organize them in least to greatest. And then I'm just going to cross out my smallest number and my biggest number. My smallest number and my biggest number. I'm going to repeat until I come to my two numbers in the center. And remember, when you have two numbers and you're trying to find the median, obviously we know that this is 10, but perhaps, if you come to two numbers that are not the same, all you do is you add them together. So you get, in this case, you'd get 20, and then divide by how many numbers there are. In this case, it's 2. So 20 divided by 2 equals 10. All right, do the same thing for game 2. Organize them greatest to least, and then once again, find the middle number. Or in this case, it's going to be 2 middle numbers. Cross out my big, cross out my small, cross out my big, cross out my small, all the way until I get down to 9 and 11. Most of you can just look at those two numbers and say, oh yeah, the middle number of those two would be 10. But remember, if you don't know how to do it, or if you aren't able to just look at those two and figure out what that middle number is, the way to do it is to add up your two numbers. So I'm going to add up 9 and 11, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide it by 2, because there are two numbers. So my median, once again, is 10. All right, moving on to letter D. It says, what is the range of points for each game? Well, recalling how to do the range, remember you have to look at your biggest number and your smallest number, and you find the difference between the two. So in this case, I'm doing 14 minus 10. Sorry, I'm doing 14. Gosh, I'm ruining it. 14 minus 4, which would equal 10. And then I do the same thing for down here at game 2. Biggest number minus my smallest number. In this case, it is also 10. I'm sensing a pattern here. Okay. Oh, almost there. Let's move on to letter E. It says, with your team, discuss and find another method for comparing the data. So, we figured out the mean, the average, the median, the range, how many total players there are. A logical thing that you could do, if you haven't thought of something, is to make a graph of it. So you can make a histogram, or a different type of graph. I think a histogram would probably be your best bet for this data. And then letter F, do you think the scoring in the two games is equivalent, or do you think it's equal? And that's kind of how you look at and interpret the data. So the book says that your answers are going to vary. Something that a lot of you probably have noted already is that all of the numbers are the same. The mean is the same. The median is the same. The range is the same. So if I'm just using my data points and I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, well, I would say, yeah. I mean, they do appear to be equivalent based off of the information that we have.